All right, let's get to it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Life is High Road, just stuff that I'm into, fitness, fighting, and all this stuff in between. Today we have Gareth Hoernel. He is an executive protective services, basically a 6'3", 240-pound monster that is somebody that you want protecting your ass 24/7. What's up, brother?
What's going on? Hey,
everything good?
Jiu-Jitsu style.
Jiu-Jitsu.
So from the mats to the studio,
yeah,
we got a great dialogue for the captive viewers and listeners today, and I'm excited to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, man. So let's start with give everybody a little bit of your background. Like what's the process? Were you military at one point?
So no former military experience.
Okay.
Grew up in a martial arts background. Had the fortunate privilege to start Isshin-Ryu karate at a young age, about 3-4 years old. And Isshin-Ryu was the traditional, one of the martial arts systems of the Japanese samurai in feudal Japan. It was a system derived from the battlefields of Japan. And the samurai needed a martial arts technical ability to, if their sword was dislodged on the field of battle. I will say I was raised at a young age with the pillars of respect, discipline, service, and the term samurai literally means to serve. And so my entire life has been predicated upon service to others and humanity, and whether it be disaster relief globally, helping out people in Fort Myers Beach with the most recent hurricane, to working with an organization, Aerial Recovery Group, that was recently in Turkey to help basically CAS-evac victims of the earthquake, or Pakistan. I am involved in an organization that is of that lineage, to service of others and to ease human suffering. So everything I do in life is predicated upon those pillars of service to others and humanity as a whole. So
wow, okay, that was a lot. Let's start from the beginning. So you trained obviously martial arts all your life. So at what point did you say, okay, this is no longer just a sport or for self-defense, like I'm gonna actually kind of help people with the skill that I have? Because I'm assuming you also went down the gun process and shooting and how to there's some process that you learn, because you're telling me you're not military background, which is fine. So you had to go through some, where did you deviate?
Essentially, played traditional sports, football, lacrosse. It wasn't until I was about 18 years old and started to play rugby in college, where I revisited kind of the pillars of self-defense and got into boxing. I used to box in the hood at this gym in Wilmington, North Carolina, 23rd and Psalms. And honestly, I remember the first day I truly got my jaw rocked by a combat vet Marine. Had just gotten back from Fallujah at that point. I think this is during the Arab Spring, so I think 2007, 2008. And, never forget just feeling my jaw get rocked by a stiff right hook, and realize that, although I had a martial arts background in karate and Isshin-Ryu, I was very underdeveloped in the skill of boxing. And then kind of dove headfirst into the sweet science, and started to go down there on a nightly basis after rugby practice, and realized the value out of boxing to empower others. All throughout college, I started to work with kids with special needs, so kids with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, autism, and initially started empowering them through the art of surfing. So we take kids that didn't have function of their legs or upper bodies, and I'd get them out in the ocean, teach them basic water safety, paddle them into waves, and then when the wave was about to curl over, pick them up, hold them up by their life jacket, and let them experience the beautiful art of surfing and what it was like to catch a wave for their first time, and just saw the empowerment and the sense of happiness and gratitude that it gave these beautiful children, and realized that there was a lack of self-defense and mixed martial arts for kids with special needs. So my buddy Jay Poole, who at that time was about 13 years old, became one of my first students, and we do basic boxing, we do basic jiu-jitsu and grappling, and I remember I was so proud to give him two of my gold medals after my first jiu-jitsu competition, and put him around his neck, and I saw the sense of pride that he had in just knowing that his older brother was finding victory on the mats of jiu-jitsu. And that happiness kind of lit a fire inside of me to pursue that full force. And, I played rugby in Argentina, almost broke my neck, tackling someone at a kickoff. And when I got back to the U.S., I needed a replacement for that combative kind of intense sport. And I found that on the mats of Jiu-Jitsu. So started out, just basically, scrappling and trying to emulate the moves of individuals like Mario Sperry or Renzo Gracie that I used to watch in the Pride series of mixed martial arts. And we would just scrap and kind of roll around in the upstairs University of North Carolina, Wilmington gym. And then I found a local MMA academy. And I remember walking in there, 245 pounds soaking wet, like probably the strongest I've ever been. And for about 2 hours, just getting ragdolled by two chicks who were about $120 soaking wet, who were maybe like 2 or 3 straight white belts. And I was like, I need to learn this Jedi mind trick known as Jiu-Jitsu. And that was literally the sticky point. That from that point on, I was like, man, I'm hooked. And that started my Jiu-Jitsu pursuit. And yeah, path towards a black belt.
And then how long did that take? So then now you're at the MMA gym and you're saying, okay, I just got destroyed by these 2 girls.
Yeah.
They weigh $120 and I'm literally 245.
Yeah, ragdoll, choked him on the legs. Like just the art of folding a grown-ass man in his pajamas was like swiftly and devastatingly learned that day. And, I tried to fuck around and I find out real quick that I was ill-equipped in fighting on the ground.
Yeah, that's what most people end up finding out. I mean, Joe Rogan has the same thing. That's how he found jiu-jitsu too, because it's like he's like, I thought I could kick anybody into oblivion. He's like, oh, that going to the ground stuff is bullshit.
Yeah.
And then when you do it in exactly the same scenario, it's like you just got destroyed by some 2 girls. You're like, wow, my ego just got deflated. I
am a weak, Twinkie-filled mofo. It was not nearly as tough as I thought I was. That's okay.
That's all right, though. But that's all that matters. Sometimes you need that reality check.
You do. I had this gnarly. I was like a poor college kid, so I had this gnarly judo gi that I would wear. It was like a freaking nautical sail that you take off some 1800 sailing vessel. So it was huge. I swam in it, and either the crotch or the shoulder would rip almost every training session. So I'd take this little Korean woman, I'd wash it, and then I'd bring it to jiu-jitsu practice. And for the first 2 months, I just trained in this burlap potato sack. I was just covered in blood and sweat. And a lot of times 2 or 3 people that day would use it before me. So it was just this gnarly
That's funny. How old were you at this time?
This was, I was 20.
21, yeah. Okay, so then I'm assuming you went the MMA route. Is that what you ended up doing, or you got stuck in jiu-jitsu and then eventually went to MMA?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to fight. I was always kind of the cat who any of the fights I did get up in school were to stick up for the underdog. And first fight I got into was in kindergarten. This kid William Gonzalez, who was Hispanic speaking and didn't really speak much.
Wait. You remember the kid's name?
Willie G, bro. That was my man.
Wow. And, I barely remember last year. My man is going hey, back. I remember the kid's first and last name from the first fight that I ever got in.
So yeah, his name was Willie Gonzalez, and he was constantly getting picked on. English was his second language. And there was this dude, Adam Quackenbush, shout out to Adam, and he would punk William Gonzalez kind of on the regular. And I got to the point where I saw Adam one day in the K2 Center bathroom and grabbed him by the collar. I was like, yo, don't ever talk to William Gonzalez like that again. And at that point, I tried to stuff his head in a porta potty and make him eat one of those bright pink urinal cakes. And as I'm grabbing him and stuffing his face into the urinal cake, I get yoked up by the dean of students and the principal. And them seeing me being the bigger dude, it was like, oh, gee, what are you doing bullying up on someone? I get sent to the principal's office, get in trouble, and it was well worth it, man. I'll take that L any day if it means that I get to stick up for someone who's being tormented or subjugated to bulliedom. So, and that was kind of the path of being a protector. I knew at that point, I was like, this is my purpose in life to
protect people
and protect those who can't defend themselves.
That's amazing. So then let's go back to the MMA part. So you found jiu-jitsu, you went the MMA part. How long did it take you to do the MMA actual fight? Because I know that you went down a little bit of short path. You did it. It was brief, right?
It was brief, yeah. So it basically started training in 2008, 2009 at All Rules MMA. Knew that I wanted to kind of fuse the boxing with the grappling art and take a fight. And so I got injured, had to take a little hiatus from jiu-jitsu, went back to New York. At that point, I had maybe like a year off from jiu-jitsu. And then when I came back to college, I got back into it with a full head of steam, started training, started competing regularly, had some good success on the mats in jiu-jitsu competition. And then it wasn't until 2012 where I had my first MMA fight. And yeah, it was just something that even like cats at the gym were like, yo, G, you should wait till at least you're a blue or purple belt. But I was like, you know what, dude, I got enough grit, fortitude, I'm hungry. Like,
just do it.
Yeah, just send it, let go. And my boy Mitchell Shamale, who owns Combat Night, like he was a big influence. Jim Allers too. Like my boy L, like they were like, yo, G, like you got that savage intensity, like take a fight. Doesn't matter what anyone's saying, like we believe in you. And that confidence that they gave to me, in turn, turned on my own confidence. I was like, all right, let's go. And so first fight, June 17th, 2012, at I think it was some spot in Orlando, some club. So I think it was a Space nightclub. Long story short, walking out, like they wake me up because I'm just chilling upstairs, kind of just meditating. I get shook by my coach, Robbie Rabare. He used to train with Ramon Decker in Holland, and he's like, yo, G, you're fighting, wake up, wake up. All of a sudden I hear Killing in the Name Of by Rage Against the Machine. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm like, all right, let's fucking go. So I'm walking down, and
It's a good song, bro. It's a good song.
Cue the rage. Getting checked out by, the athletic commission. Arms are extended, making sure I don't have any, margarita-like plaster in my gloves. My mouthpiece is in, I got a cup on. And all of a sudden I go from like absolute savage kill mode to looking over my right shoulder, seeing this beautiful girl in a fire truck red dress. And I'm like, oh my God. That might be the most beautiful Mediterranean women I've ever seen. So I go into the cage, not focused on the fight, but focused on the girl. Literally first minute of the first round of my first ever MMA fight, throw this haphazard snap kick without setting it up with my hands, freaking spike this dude's elbow, land on the back right foot, and my foot just crumbles. I'm like, oh shit, definitely just broke my foot.
Oof.
Wound up grinding out like a 3-round battle against a very, very tough dude who had a wrestling background. Get him in a triangle, get him in an arm bar, and he's just like freaking voraciously fighting through anything I throw at him in the kitchen sink, like through my whole freaking arsenal of jiu-jitsu techniques, and he's still pushing forward. And it was such a good test. I think like battling the adversity of a broken foot that early, and then having an adversary who was just tough as nails and like push me to really, really like dig deep to get the victory. And then to hear the acclaim of, my teammates and friends who had come to support me. And at that point, it unlocked a level of confidence that I never once had before in my life.
Yeah, well, fighting somebody like that, it's gonna definitely level you up as a man. It taps into the primalness of who you are, And if you've always been a protector and someone that knew that he was gonna fight, it was like, this is what it is. You feel your broken foot, you look down at it, you're like, fuck. I just gotta keep doing it. Let's go.
I was like, good. Like I want it to be as difficult and arduous as possible. And I want this to be a scrap and an absolute battle, because I know when I emerge from it, win, loss, or draw, I'm going to be a better man. I'm going to be a more formidable individual from the experience. And I was. And I'm so grateful I had that injury.
Nice. How long? So what did you end up doing? Like you fractured your foot? What did you do?
Yeah, so I really didn't do anything. Just kind of rocked out with it for like, the entirety of the healing process. Never got it put in an air cast or set it back. I just kind of gritted through it, and I had it as a reminder, every day, every time I planted on it and walked on it, to be like, never lose focus, always keep your eyes on the target, and B, never just throw a snap kick without first setting it up with your hands. So to me, it was just like a painful reminder that I wanted to embrace. And I was back to work the next day. I was training. I trained right through it. At that point, I went up to New York to spend some time with my mom and my grandmother, who was getting old, and she was, in failing health, and really wanted to spend some time with the family. And at that point, got a job opportunity with the UFC Gym Long Island. It was the flagship of the UFC Gym Corporation, and had a great opportunity and kind of a gift from God to teach, to train martial arts, and to pursue, my jiu-jitsu black belt. And so I did, and so worked there for 5 years.
Nice.
All the while, I was in the process to become a federal special agent. That didn't materialize for reasons outside my control. And so I went from fighting and competing pretty regularly to, for about 2 years, not competing at all, out of fear of getting injured for the federal special agent process, right?
Yeah, which that's a logical process that you followed.
Yeah.
Just waiting for it, because just imagine you hurt yourself and you actually get the job, and then you can't really do your job that you've been waiting on for 3 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it enabled me to still train, to still coach, but I really didn't compete. That didn't work out right as I was about to go down to FLETC. And so, long story short, I was like, okay, took it as a sign from God that, maybe I am meant to compete in martial arts and get back to the grind there. And so started to compete in Jiu-Jitsu almost on a monthly basis, and actually lost a close nail-biter match to one of my boys who trained at Soka Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
And, this dude beat me pretty handedly. I mean, it was close, but his technique was just superior to mine.
Okay.
And so the next day, I remember, teeth went through my lip, had this huge gash on my mouth. It was a great battle. I was very appreciative of the experience. But that match was Saturday, and by Monday morning, I was going to this dude's academy and slapping hands with him 48 hours later to get some revenge, and also learn from the source of this brilliant technique that he beat me with.
Nice.
And that started my pursuit of jiu-jitsu under Alexander Asoka,
Nice.
one of the original ADCC champions, and a dear friend, professor, and brother of mine.
Nice.
And so that was really where my jiu-jitsu kind of
Life blossomed.
blossomed.
Yeah, nice. So then how did you end up going from that to the security thing? Because there's got to be some process there. You obviously, like you said, you've been wanting to be a protector. It's just who you are since you were like a kid. And now you know that you want to fight. So you protector, obviously, you need to protect stuff. So you obviously need to know how to fight to some extent.
Exactly.
So did you start maybe doing if you were thinking about doing a federal agency thing, were you also... Did you go down the gun route and that process while you were prepping for that federal agency, while you're doing the fighting? Because usually what I've noticed is one thing that people don't understand too is people think, oh, you're a martial artist. Yeah, but every martial artist I've ever met also carries a gun
100%.
and carries a knife. So just because you think that they can defend themselves with their hands, they could probably shoot you if necessary if they feel their life is in danger. People have this conception because they think that the person can fight, that they're not going to be armed as well. And it's like, no, every martial artist I know always has a gun on them, or in their house they just do.
Absolutely.
Is that the path that you went? The more you went into it, you're like, oh, you were starting getting attracted to guns, and let me figure out this gun process?
Yeah, it was something I always, my first experience holding a rifle was when I was 5 years old, and my grandfather took me down in the basement and handed me his service issue M1 Garand rifle that he used both in World War II and at the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, where the U.S. Marine Corps was surrounded by 90,000 North Koreans and Chinese.
Jesus.
And only in a unit of 13,000 American Marines and Army soldiers. And at that point, I didn't realize the lesson of that, but it was a lesson of this is the weight and gravity of what it means to be a protector. And the second thing he gave me was King Arthur's Camelot, a book that was an original copy from the 1800s. And it didn't click until last weekend, actually, that these were two lessons he gave, both from the rifle, being a natural protector and knowing that you have to be willing to die and you have to be willing to kill for those you want to protect and safeguard, and then B, following the noble truth of being a righteous citizen, doing right, defending those who are being tormented, tortured, or bullied by those in society, and always choosing the righteous path and doing stuff with integrity, with honor, with discipline, with respect for all creatures. And it brings to the point the name and what my name means. And Gareth was this individual who, although he was from a noble royal family, wanted to earn his right to be called one of the Knights of the Round Table. And so in Camelot, Gareth started out as a lowly busboy and servant in King Arthur's Camelot. And while King Arthur was out on crusade, an individual known as the Green Knight came to Camelot trying to take both Guinevere and the kingdom from Arthur. And the only male that was left to defend King Arthur's Camelot was Gareth. And he fought this valiant battle against the Green Knight and eventually slayed this potential conqueror. And when King Arthur came back, he had Gareth kneel down on one knee, unsheathed his Excalibur, and pressed the blade on both right and left shoulder of Gareth and knighted him as Sir Gareth, Knight of the Round Table. And Interestingly enough, it wasn't until last weekend where I realized I passed the litmus test that my grandfather had set before me at the age of 5 years old.
That's amazing.
And it all came full circle. So
That's amazing. Okay. So then from there, where did it go? That's, wow, that was an epic story right there. The name and the grandfather. Wow.
So knowing that, jiu-jitsu and boxing and Muay Thai was an essential unarmed source of combatives that I became obsessed with, and I knew would enable me to protect others. I then started to develop an affinity for, bladed weapons training. Started to train in Cali and Eskrima, and then also being in New York, it was hard to find the ability to shoot pistol or rifle.
Tell me a little bit about the knife training, because I've never actually done anything like that. I know that there was a guy that I trained with a long time ago that did knife fighting from, I think it was Thailand. I forgot what country it was. And it was difficult. He did knife and stick fighting, so it was a lot of stick fighting.
Filipino.
So there you go.
Cali and Eskrima.
Yeah. And I did it for a real short period of time, but it's not easy.
It's not.
And you got to accept the fact that most likely you're going to lose. You're going to get cut and you're going to get loose.
Blood.
Yeah.
That's one thing you got to realize in a knife fight or any sort of entanglement where there is a bladed weapon. Like, you are going to get cut, so you have to be expected to bleed. But it's all about frame blocking without getting cut on your arteries. So I'd rather take a blade slash to the forearm than the inner arm, right? I'd rather get caught on the outside lateral part of my thigh than the inner femoral part of my thigh. So like strategically positioning your body to meet the knife with more aggressive force than it's coming at you, and then create angles of attack so you can essentially minimize the damage to yourself and maximize the damage to your opponent.
Right. How long did you do that for, though? Because that's something. It's a lot of consistency and timing. So it's not that there's no technique. There is technique, but it's just it's almost like boxing, where like there's just only a set number of strikes to some extent, but you got to practice it so that you can use the same 4 or 5 strikes in like 50 million different variations. And if I remember correctly, again, I'm just guessing that there was the process with the knife fighting. At least when I took it, I was like, man, this is just 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 with the stick, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, and then you just got to keep going until all of a sudden it goes 1 2 3 4, then 1 2 3 4, and then you start going from 2 to 2 to 3, 2 to 4, or whatever that process is. But so how long did you train that knife and stuff fighting?
So bladed weapons training started when I was about 3 or 4 years old with my brother, and we trained kendo, so like the Japanese art of sword fighting.
You came out your mom as a baby with wanted to punch people in the face, stab you if necessary.
Being a completely violent hippie, and just someone who's like fascinated with the art of war, but then also fascinated with the art of peace and like love, and operates really from a pure place of light and love, but realizes that you have to face the darkness and you have to be skilled at violence. Right. Like Jordan Peterson says it all the time. You can't be a good man is not someone who is not skilled in violence. A good man is someone who's skilled in violence but shows restraint and shows control and has the ability to know when or not to use violence to defend those in society who are vulnerable and are being unfortunately tormented by egotistical, tyrannical, oppressive individuals.
Yeah, my son's growing up, and I try to tell him that the essence of as a man is to protect others. Especially the people that you care about. It's like, I see it with me wanting to protect my son, and I see it now with other men as well. It's like our natural instinct when we lean into our own masculinity. It's like we want to protect the people that we love, the people that are around us, whoever those people are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's beautiful, man. It really is. It's this whole thing that I now see that there seems to be turning a little bit, but like where masculinity was like a problem. It's not. It's the exact opposite of what they think it is.
They label it as toxic masculinity. Well, what happens is if you neuter society and you don't let boys embrace their warriordom, then you let evil prevail. Evil prevails when good men stand by and do nothing about it. Look 100%. At World War II. Look at what we see in the Middle East, where women get stoned to death for learning how to read or exposing themselves without their burqa. Look what's happening in Iran right now. So masculinity is needed to keep order in society. And actually, the divine masculine energy is someone who is ferocious in the field of battle, but knows how to also nurture, love, and protect. It's the duality. It's the yin and yang. Like, you can't be a good member of society without knowing how to defend yourself and those who you care about.
Yeah, but at least here in the States, I mean, you travel more around the world than I do, but here in the States, you can, like, I see it because I teach Jiu-Jitsu kids, and you see the kids, and you're like, man, these boys don't know how to be boys.
No.
It's like you're soft a little bit, like, not in a bad way, not soft, like, there's people that are a little softer than others, it's just natural who they are.
Being sensitive is good,
but you need to harden it a little bit. Like, you got to have a little bit of thick skin, and I see it now, like, even with the one of the older, he's not a kid, he's 21 years old. But like, I see it even with him, like, even though he's a good athlete, he you can see that he likes to fight, but you can see that he has
like a hesitancy.
Like a hesitancy, and he hasn't, like, because he's taken it on his own. Like, he didn't have the previous generation. I don't know if it was his father. Even I know he has a father in his life, but I don't know if his father wasn't like that, or he didn't bring a crew of guys. Because that's another thing too. I didn't realize that when I was younger either, that you really do need other men in your circle, like having other men. Because we keep each other honest.
We do.
It's like, if you're fucking up, they're going to tell you, hey, man, you're fucking up.
100%.
You know what I mean? And that's where I feel like it's lost a little bit, like, on this generation, that they don't really kind of focus and work together as a team to do stuff.
Yeah, and you need that tribe. You need that negative or positive reinforcement. And young males need strong, warrior-like father figures in their lives. I didn't grow up with my dad for from the time I was like 10 to 18, and that really damaged my self-confidence. It damaged my ability to feel powerful, and I felt so vulnerable, going through those periods in life where, I was super fortunate to have friends' fathers who filled that void, and I was super fortunate to have a brother who toughened me up and showed me the pillars of what it was like to be gritty and determined and fight for what you believe in, and a beautiful, strong mom. And now I have a great relationship with my dad, and he's an amazing soul. But, I take it upon myself now to be a positive male role model in the lives of young males, because they need that strength. They need to be modeled and have someone to emulate and show that being masculine is about being fierce and defensive to those who are mistreated, but then also loving and nurturing and taking care of the people that are in your circle, and the complete stranger, and everyone in between, and that is what keeps a society orderly. What we have now, with the advent of social media and these keyboard crusader tough guys who are hanging out in mom's basement, who are talking more shit than a drunken sailor, who've never been punched in their mouth, and they claim to be the subject matter experts on things and want to just ridicule and spit hatred and vitriol, and let ego, greed, and narcissism poison and take over society. And look what happens in places like, communist China or communist occupied, Russia or the Middle East. When you have ego, narcissism, and greed take over, and you have people who think they're above God, and they literally let ego, or in the acronym, edging God out, take control, then they subjugate people to the most horrific, vile, violent treatment. And we need strong men in society to fight and check people and ensure that people aren't letting ego, greed, or power get out of control. Because if not, then we have situations like World War II, where we saw 6 million people get sent to the gas chambers and get exterminated for their religious belief. And it all starts from keeping each other honest, checking men, making sure that kids have a place to go after school where they can work on their homework, or they can participate in sports, so they're not getting caught up in the street crime aspects of violence or hustling, or in the inner cities. We need that the most, man. Like, everyone, we want to create a viable solution to the senseless violence in this country and globally. Create after school programs where kids can see positive role male models in their lives and learn what it's like to be a good member of society. And that's something I really want to do more of. I never feel like I'm doing enough, and I really want to enable kids to feel seen and heard and loved and empowered, for the positivity of humanity,
Yeah, it's true. I think that the lack of masculinity is why we have all the school shootings. I think it's basically boys that are deprived sexually because they don't know how to talk to women, are deprived of relationships because they don't know how to talk to people, so they have lack of friendships.
Absolutely.
And then an idle mind is a dangerous mind.
Yeah.
You know, and it's one of those things. It's like I used to not think that. I used to think it was just some crazy kid, and now that I've gotten older, I kind of have hindsight, and I'm like, man, they're just kids that didn't know how to be around other people and didn't know how to talk to girls.
And they feel outcast in society because they don't have a parental structure that teaches them how to treat women and to honor the divine femininity and to treat others with respect and discipline and do things out of light and love and not out of control or self-gain. Second to that, like, they don't have a tribe. They don't have a collective community of people that support them and that they can learn from and grow together and feel included, right? So they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to feel valued. And if you don't feel seen, heard, or valued, then you're going to have a negative conception and reality of the people around you. And if that festers long enough, and then couple that with the fact that these kids are getting bullied, then they're so checked out that they just want to end their pain and want to, unfortunately, a lot of times end the lives of the people that maybe are subjugating to them the bullying and the torture. And I think martial arts as a standard course of study in our schools would
be phenomenal.
Would be phenomenal, man. If you learn how to be tough and you learn how to be humbled and realize that at a young age that if you can breathe, you can choke, and that no one is, completely protected. There's always going to be someone that's stronger, bigger, faster, tougher than you. And the moment you learn that through martial arts, it teaches you to be respectful. It teaches you manners. Teaches you discipline. It
does. It's like, and that's one of the things. It's like there's always with men. There's like what they always say is there's like an underlining threat. In other words, how that's why you were talking about the keyboard word. There's no underlining threat.
No.
It's like you can talk shit with no repercussions.
No repercussions whatsoever.
Where in real life, it's someone that looks at you and tries to talk shit to you. You're gonna look at them and go, "What did you say?" And the person's gonna fold.
We need to install like an automatic AI fist that just comes out of your posterior screen and just punches
them
you in the nose.
according to what you look like in real life.
Yeah, just oh, you want to talk shit? Well, guess what? You're gonna get hit. And that's how I grew up, man. Like, I talk shit, you got hit, dude. Like, you want to run your mouth? Well, guess what? You're gonna get punched in your mouth. And I learned early on. Like, you fuck around, you will find out.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked I had a brother who reinforced that to me every day. Yeah. A lot of times I didn't learn the lesson, so guess what? I would get my ass beat again and again until I did learn the lesson.
Yeah, I had that with a cousin of mine. He used to basically beat me up as I was growing up, but it gave me thick skin. It gives you thick skin, so then when someone else messes with you, you're like, whatever. It's like my cousin is like 3 times your size, and he'll slap me in the face.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
So let's circle back to where we're at. So you got into the Ashoka is his name? What was it? I'm sorry. The black belt instructor.
Oh, so
Soka.
Alexandre Soka Freitas. So from Barra Tijuca, Brazil. Grew up in the same era as Renzo Mario, and was the first ADCC champion in the same ADCC that Renzo and Mario won back in 96 or 98. Mm-hmm. And so I started training with him, and just his masterful technique, his ability to instruct and take a very complex martial art like Jiujitsu and really simplify it is incredible. And in my opinion, the best coach I've ever worked with. Just an amazing instructor.
Nice.
And that transformed my jiu-jitsu game. It was great learning from the source of where jiu-jitsu originated, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And to have a family, to have this beautiful team of people to come with every day and hold me honest and keep me accountable and troubleshoot my technique. And the things I used to get away with, I wasn't getting away with there. And it fortified my defense. It enabled me to really become a student of the game.
And this was at the same time that you were working at the UFC gym, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then from there, how did the GTH Consulting kind of come about? So I'm assuming from there you got into you leaned into the martial arts. You're doing the knife defense. you're probably practicing, obviously, firearms and stuff like that.
Yeah, so firearms training was limited during that time frame just because New York being a very kind of,
Anti-gun?
gun-controlled,
Yeah.
anti-gun state,
Yeah.
it was hard to get the firearms training. I started with the knife defense, really went headfirst into Muay Thai.
What are the rules in New York? Just curious, because I honestly don't know. Because I've never been really into guns. Now that I'm older, I'm kind of it's calling to me.
Yeah.
And I know from Florida and Texas are just like the Wild Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
But I know New York and California is a little bit different. So what's the difference between like New York and kind of like some place like Florida?
Yeah, so they're getting more lenient with the gun laws in New York, but in the 5 boroughs, you're not able to possess a pistol unless you're law enforcement or a business owner who gets basically a
When you say pistol, you mean
pistol
handgun?
permit. Handgun. Yes.
Handgun. Okay.
You can, not in the city, but you can on Long Island or upstate New York, possess a rifle, a shotgun, or a long rifle.
Okay.
But if you want to get a pistol, you have to go through a pretty in-depth background check
Okay.
and go through a sportsman's license process, which then grants you access to have a pistol, but only transport it to and from your house and then the range and then back home.
Okay.
It doesn't enable you to have it, on your person like you would here in Florida with a concealed carry weapons license.
Well, now starting in July, apparently you don't even need that here, if I read correctly. A buddy of mine is a military guy, so like he kind of pops up stuff. Like he pays attention to that because he's
Keeps you
really
current.
he keeps me current with like the good stuff.
Of course.
And I think it's July. Santa has passed something saying that you don't need anything. You can just walk around with a gun.
Yeah, it's going to be constitutional carry.
Again, I've never been into guns, so this is give me a second on this. I got fed that I guess I wouldn't call it propaganda, but the message of like that guns are bad. Mm-hmm. And now I've seen society change. I've seen the whole process again. I'm old enough now to hindsight, and I realize now that it's kind of keeping everybody in check. Like a firearm, what it does. It's not about the firearm. It's about the fact that you don't know if they have a firearm. That kind of that keeps everybody honest.
Yeah.
It puts less stress on the police because the police understand like, hey, everyone is going to behave because they don't know if an actual shooting might actually happen because you don't know if everybody's carrying.
Exactly.
And I used to not think like that. In my mind, I was like, oh, you want to take away guns from people? Like, you want to minimize how much they actually have firearms because in their mind, violent people have firearms, blah, 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 whatever it was. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, yeah, the violent people still have firearms. But what if the non-violent people also have firearms?
Yeah.
So that the violent people, if they ever use the firearm, the non-violent people can shoot the violent people, because it's kind of where we're like, it's a weird dynamic that you don't think, it's counterintuitive. You think less guns would be better. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the more you make it into like the wild, wild west, not necessarily, but just figuratively, it keeps everybody honest.
Yeah. It's a force multiplier, and a firearm in the hands of a law-abiding citizen who takes a solemn oath to protect those around him is an invariable threat that the active shooter doesn't think of. And there's countless examples of armed, legally qualified, tactically trained citizens engaging threats. There was a situation about 2 years ago at a church in Texas where an individual stormed the pulpit with a shotgun, and one of the parishioners drew his weapon, his concealed carry, engaged the threat, neutralized the threat, and literally saved a mass full of 75 plus people that otherwise would have been murdered in cold blood. So, yeah, guns have the ability to take life, but they also have the ability to preserve and protect life. And I think there should be a stringent process with who gets issued guns, just like a driver's license. I think there should be some sort of trained up process where you get a CCW, and you do have to take a course, but I think the gun owner should take the moral responsibility to be precise and tactically trained on whatever weapon system that they carry on their person.
Right.
I think that onus is definitely on the gun owner, but I think there should be training in place that makes training more accessible and that sets some standard curriculum for firearms.
They barely do it with the police, which is, to me, is utterly ludicrous.
Yeah, it's just like the police not being able to train jiu-jitsu or not being able to use boxing or Muay Thai in an arrest situation.
When I was in New York, I was, when the Black Lives Matter and the whole COVID situation was going on, I was training at Marcelo Garcia's up in New York. And a lot of the guys that trained there were also police officers. And one of the guys, I befriended him, who's a really cool dude. He basically was like, he showed me the video of that they had to like train, and I was like, how are you arresting people? He's like, I don't know. I was like, wow. And then he also told me that he is an anomaly because he trains like sword fighting. He was very active with firearms. He trains jiu-jitsu. He was like a blue belt jiu-jitsu at the time. He's like, but they don't push it. He's like, I'm like 1% of the police force. And I remember having conversations with people. It's like, again, it goes back to the knowing how to be ferocious. And I feel like a lot of the problems that they have with police officers as well is just the police officers come from a scared position, and that's because they haven't had enough training to understand to be, hey man, if you want me to, you fuck around, you're gonna find out. But like in a real setting where it's like they know how to control the situation, and it just comes from lack of training. So I think it's ludicrous that the police force doesn't really tell you, hey, you have to be at least a blue belt in jiu-jitsu so that you understand how to grapple.
Absolutely.
You got. I think they got to do one firearm training, I think a year or something like that. Something really low volume. Yeah, like a low volume thing. But they don't have to do a certain amount of hours. It's really weird how they kind of do that. And again, you hear the news or the propaganda of it, or the however you want to word it, where they're like, oh no, it's because it's the cops' fault, or they don't need more training. We already give them enough money for training. That you're like, what? Like I've talked to the actual police officers. They really don't get that much training.
Yeah, they're expected to deal with the public on their absolute worst day. They're thrown in the mix of emotionally disturbed individuals who are in the most chaotic, tumultuous experience or state of mind, who a lot of times are armed, and then they're thrown in the mix without the prerequisite skill sets of training, the stress inoculation, and the ability to safely and effectively make an arrest that both safeguards arrestor and arrestee. And it was insane. 2 years ago, they made a public service announcement, the NYPD, from a jiu-jitsu black belt, where side control and basic controlling jiu-jitsu positions were no longer permissible in New York. And so you literally took away the rights of the police officers to control and apprehend a suspect in a safe, effective fashion. Like, the people that are making laws and passing diction on escalation of threat and violence have never been in an altercation themselves.
Never.
Good luck, person who wants to sit on their high horse and demonize the person who's simply just trying to train so that they can go home to their wife and kids at the end of the night. Like, everyone should be training jiu-jitsu. And I guess what? If we had politicians who actually trained and knew what it was like to be humbled out on the mats, we wouldn't have this huge division. We wouldn't have societal problems. We wouldn't have this dissension and tribalism that we're having here in the United States between left and right. And we would be a more harmonious, united country. And 100%. Martial arts embodies that. And so...
Yeah, I had a discussion with someone. I posted something. I don't know if you saw that Nate Diaz got into like some street altercation with some whatever it was. So I posted the video, and some guy's like, oh, he's slammed his head, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, are we watching the same video? Like you can tell. I don't know if he mouthed off. He probably did because he's Nate Diaz, whatever it may be. He might have probably mouthed off to the guy. But you could tell, like I responded to the guy. I'm like, the guy knows how to strike.
Yeah.
Would you rather have him punch and kick him a couple times in the head so that he could fall on concrete, crack his head open, and die?
Yeah.
Or he grabs his neck, knees him once so that he can choke him out, puts him to sleep, and then falls with him to make sure he doesn't crack his head open. So yeah, it looked like it was a rough fall. He could have been a little bit more gentle with it. But I literally respond, I'm like, I've been in that situation. When someone goes asleep, it's very difficult to control their weight as you're falling. You're just trying not to, both of you fall forward into the ground. And it's just a lack of knowledge. You're just like in your mind, you're like, dude, if you ever fought anybody, man, you're talking from the imaginary, the imaginary Disneyland. Yeah.
Disneyland of concept to reality. And that's the thing, man. Like, people don't understand. It takes just as much time to get a PhD or a doctorate as it does to get a jiu-jitsu black belt. Like, you're literally putting yourself on the mats for tens of thousands of hours in the pursuit of grappling. It's starting to be respected, but people underestimate the power of jiu-jitsu. It creates someone who could defend himself and others in society. B, it creates a more well-rounded, open-minded individual. You have Jews, Gentiles, blacks, whites, gays. It doesn't matter what race, color, creed you are. On the mats, you are all the same. You are equal. That is a force multiplier for good. And these people that want to demonize or vilify people in arrest situations who are using jujitsu, like, man, so should they pull their knife? Should they pull their gun? Like, there's been some situations recently where people have unfortunately put people in submissions, and these individuals have expired, and that is a travesty. But to the controlled person who knows when to release a choke and knows how to effectively mitigate a threat, jiu-jitsu is the most effective martial art in the world.
100%.
Hands down.
100%, especially for controlling situation. That's why I like what this guy Henry Gracie does, because Henry Gracie, he even, I think he got permission from some city, I don't know, with the police force, the chief of police, and they implemented, and like he literally has stats of like the reduction of like police firings, or however they word it. And so it's like, it's a good thing, because he's like pushing for the police officer, like, hey, look, we'll teach you how to actually arrest people effectively, where you're not going to hurt them. You don't have to put your knee on their neck.
Yeah.
You don't have to crush them. There's ways that you could do it so you can teamwork together. I was actually interested in taking his course just so that I could learn it, because it's still jiu-jitsu, but it's like specifically geared to like trying to subdue someone and to be able to turn them over to put handcuffs on them.
Yeah, I've had dozens of testimonials from clients who I've trained that are corrections officers, police officers, individuals who are in military uniform who have used jiu-jitsu safely and effectively to defend themselves or to defend others. And, you know, there's nothing better than you receive a testimonial that someone was able to defend themselves, or someone was responding to an all-out brawl or riot in Rikers Island and was able to apprehend the suspect who was swinging on them and literally trying to smash their head into a wall, and he was able to get an underhook and an overhook and control that person and literally save his own life. Like, that is such a powerful, beneficial thing. And it literally is life-saving. And I can't say it enough. Like, we need to implement martial arts curriculum in schools, in society. Like, you know, learn respect, learn discipline, learn how to treat others, learn how to defend yourself. If you know how to defend yourself and you're skilled in the art of violence, you are less likely to ever use violence, because you know what you're capable of.
And you also know what other people are capable of.
Exactly.
It's that you're like, you have that respect. It's like when you meet someone like Marcelo Garcia. This is a small little dude with a Disney smile, but that guy will wrap you up, and you're screwed in under 30 seconds.
Exactly. and I think, like, you know, the same thing that you were talking about with firearms, like in Florida, you don't know who is packing heat, right? And it's starting to become a thing in the martial arts world as well. Like, you don't know who you're messing with. You don't know if this guy's a Golden Gloves boxer. You don't know if he's a jiu-jitsu practitioner or a wrestler.
Whatever.
Sure, there's telltale signs, maybe cauliflower ear or scarred up face, but a lot of times, dude, guys who you think just jumped out of a computer chair and are these, you know, tech nerds are some of the most savage, intense strangler artists the world has ever seen. So, like, how about this? Just be kind to everybody. Shouldn't come down to that. You should just be cool and kick it real to everyone just cause. But especially when you know there's people that train martial arts every day. And man, I've had situations recently where cats have like pressed me or like, yo, I'll punch you in the face or this or that or threaten violence. And I'm like, dude, like, you've gotten way too comfortable talking shit and not getting hit. Like, I'll be your Huckleberry. Like, we could, it takes two to tango. Like, you want to throw the five? Like, let's go. And very seldomly do those people ever respond. They usually cower, quiver,
Of course you do.
and wave up the white flag, like the Twinkie-filled mofos that they are, who just want to poke the bear and not expect the claws.
Yeah. But it's so funny. I say that about Mario Sperry sometimes. Mario's, you know, he's been there, done that. But Mario's the nicest guy on the planet, nicest dude. But there's just undertone energy that, like, he'll look at you and go,
Peers into your soul.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, I'm sorry. You just don't know what to say. You just go, I'm sorry.
Exactly. And like, listen, I try never to stoop down to the level of like the ego-driven narcissist of the world who like, lifts weights or played football or played, you know, elite level soccer. So things like, you may be able to slam dunk on me. You may be able to drive past me on a touchdown. You may be able to hit a better golf ball than me. But guess what? If we throw down and we bite down on the mouthpiece and we swing and we throw down, two things for certain. I will either die in that cage or ring, or I will pour out every last drop of blood coursing through my veins in the pursuit of victory. And if I do die, then I'm completely content honoring the legacy of the warriors that came before me. And I know the great Valkyries will fly down, and the beautiful winged women will take me to the great halls of Valhalla. And I'll drink out of a giant horn filled with everlasting mead or honey beer, and I'll live with my brothers in absolute glory. No, but in all seriousness, like, you know, I think it's just about a matter of respect. Like, we should respect everyone. Like, we should judge people by the content of their character and who they are as a human being,
100%.
rather than the color, the race, the creed. Like, all that's BS, man. All that is meant to, by the powers that be, is to create division and to create tribalism and to create dissension. When in actuality, like, I'm not the Liberal Party, I'm not the Republican Party, I'm of the Humanitarian Party. I believe in
humans,
protection and human rights, and
just leave me alone. Just let me do me.
Let people live, you know, as long as you're not hurting anyone, or, you know, like, just let people be.
Yeah, that's the direction where I think we're headed now. Like, I feel like country's kind of shifting a little bit. I think the division is now because of the internet, and I think because of social media. I think, honestly, because I was never a big fan of Trump, but I think one of the benefits Trump did is that he highlighted how corrupt, or how much they actually try to control the message, and how much they're trying to force division. And that's one of the things that, like, I did, like, he literally kind of highlighted it, because they just hated him so much that they're like, no, fuck closing the door. Let's just do it out in the open, and we're just going to try to burn him in every way that we can. And it now the internet is now forcing the whole, everyone's independent now. Like, all the journalists are now going off on their own. You know, Joe Rogan doing Joe Rogan, which is amazing. You know, Joe Rogan's doing, like, bro, the guy's doing God's work, to be honest with you, for the country. Because I feel like the country was going in a particular direction that was kind of going really dark. Yeah. You know, and I feel like Joe Rogan is like that dude that, like, this, like, the dude's dude, but at the same time, women can't really hate on him. Republicans can't really hate on him. Democrats can't really, no one can really hate on him.
He's speaking the noble truth. He is speaking the noble truth, and he is speaking from a very neutral position. He stands his ground, and he's not afraid to die on the hill for what he believes in, but he's also open-minded and tolerant, right? And he's, you know, this country is founded upon intellectual discourse, and if I have an argument or disagreement with someone, then we should talk it out. We should not try to cancel each other. We should discuss it logically so that we can come to some middle ground agreement or understanding. And if we don't agree, is still at least respect the individuality of the human consciousness and respect others' opinions. We live in this society where, you know, everyone's about freedom of speech till you tell someone something they don't want to hear, and then they freak out, or then they label you as something that you're not, just to try to cancel your thoughts and your mind and your vision.
That's so horrible.
That one-sided conversation is literally the seed that is planted in any totalitarian regime. And eventually, if left unchecked, it leads to savage tyrannical oppression and the extermination of entire groups of marginalized peoples.
Now, speaking on that, have you ever protected somebody in countries that are in that type of situation?
Yeah, so I've protected a lot of people who have, you know, viable threats on their lives, individuals who have, you know, certain crime syndicates that are trying to get to them, to kidnap them and then extort them for money. A lot of whom I protected were big in the fintech or the crypto space and had both cartel and organized crime families actively seeking to kidnap these individuals. And with crypto, you know, all it takes is the kidnapper to basically put a gun to the person's head, ask them for their ledger information, and then you could liquidate their entire crypto portfolio with one quick upload onto a scan disk or onto a, you know, an external hard drive.
Interesting. So it's that easy, huh?
It is, and it's, you know, you see it more and more. And a lot of these crypto figureheads are getting kidnapped because it is an easy grab, and so yeah, a lot of the individuals, you know, political officials, you know, celebrities, but a lot of high net worth individuals who are kind of under the radar, but have nefarious groups and crime syndicates after them to actively try to exploit them for financial gain.
Wow, I didn't know it was that easy. I guess so, because it's all digital, and then the code with I don't know enough about crypto. That's one thing that I kind of get it, but I don't get it. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's a lot of people. It's not just me, but I think that's the future as well. Is digital money.
Yeah. And for 2 weeks straight, I was literally helping to run a team of 16, combat vets, MARSOC, Marines, federal special agents, all individuals who have retired from service in uniform, and, got the drop from our intelligence team that a certain cartel element was going to kidnap our client,
Wow.
in military-age males, pulling reconnaissance on the front of their position as well as on the back of the house that we were staying at, and basically plotting a kidnap mission set to, again, kidnap our client. Their plan was to assault the front of the house. As we defended the front of the house, someone would pour in through the back of the house, kidnap our client, take him to a small Zodiac, which would then proceed to a larger boat, take him off intercoastal waters, and then from there, all it takes is you threatening their lives, putting a gun to that person's head, and then again,
Done.
exploiting them for their crypto intelligence and liquidating their portfolio. And it's that easy. That week, literally was sleeping with both a rifle and a laptop on my chest as I was watching the time-weighted average price point of the crypto exchange, and anytime it dropped below a certain point, we take money from the hedge fund, put it into the crypto market to kind of balance it out and prevent the collapse. Well, inherently, it's like trying to stop a bleed, right? Eventually, if you don't get emergency medical care, that person's going to bleed out. And the same thing happened with the crypto markets. And so it went from Bitcoin, $62,000 per coin, and $19K per coin. It just so serendipitously happened is at the same time that our client was being planned to be kidnapped, the markets crashed. And so it safeguarded both our team as well as our client from the inevitable threat. But that stuff happens stateside. This was a local threat. This was something that
Really?
It wasn't off in some far distant land. It was something that was very local to where we are right now. So
Wow.
there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that most people don't think about. And there's individuals who work in the shadows to protect, individuals from being killed or kidnapped. And, a lot of the stuff that we do is clandestine, but a lot of it is also like, open and out there. And so that's kind of the interesting facet of executive protection and close protection details. There's a huge scope. So everything from like corporate executive conferences to protecting in a close protection element, political officials or A or B list celebrities, to more high threat scenarios where you're literally, either Oculus outside the continental United States or CONUS, continental United States, where you're protecting a high net worth individual, someone who maybe is, going through a jury proceeding, someone who has an active threat on their lives or their family's lives. And we are the buffer or the phalanx of protection between those individuals, their families, and that imminent threat, or the forces, the dark forces that be that are trying to get to our clients.
So let's circle back a little bit though, because we kind of glossed over the transition from the MMA to teaching jiu-jitsu or working at the UFC gym. From that UFC gym, then how did the actual GTH kind of come around? I'm assuming, were you working for someone else at first?
So yeah, I got recruited to work for an individual, Kaz Minot, dear friend and colleague of mine, who recruited me to work for, I guess, one of the first big events, which was when the Super Bowl, I guess it was 2014, was in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. They played at the Meadowlands and had a big Super Bowl party in New York City, hosted by Adriana Lima, Brooklyn Decker. Steven Tyler was there, Justin Bieber. And I guess that was the first time where I did EP work for A-list celebrities, athletes, well-known individuals within those spaces. And that was kind of my foot in the door, using my jiu-jitsu background, my MMA background, to be of service and protection for high net worth individuals. From there, next real big detail that I got on was working a protection detail on the southern Mexican-American border for a few political figures who were down there basically in cartel country trying to figure out a way to safeguard
That must have been interesting.
American national security. And so, yeah, like I was with the MARSOC Marine, Joint Terrorism Task Force dude, clearly like the white belt of the group. And my boy's like, hey, man, just, you know how to put on a tourniquet? I'm like, no, not really. But you want to give me, he's like, it's super easy. Like, if any of us get shot, just make sure you pull this strap, you cinch it tight with the windlass, and you hopefully stop the bleeding. I'm like, hopefully? Like, is there any way you could break it down? He's like, we don't have time, but make sure you drop our location every time we're making a major movement today. You know how to do that, right? I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could figure it out. So, like, that was my introduction. I just got thrown in the mix, literally, on the southern Mexican-American border, and was like, yeah, just
Figure it out.
Like on-site drop training 101, right? And so, yeah, that was kind of my entry into the, I guess, like the political side of executive protection in higher threat. I mean, very high threat areas.
Well, yeah, if you're dealing with a cartel and their politicians in that in that neighborhood, especially the border, the cartel it's all about space and how they can cross the border. So I can imagine.
Exactly. So then from there, continued. At that point, I was also in the process to, get into naval special warfare. So I was going through it's called the Warrior Challenge, basically like a prep program to go to BUD/S. At that point, I broke my foot for the second time, and in Muay Thai, and then was running the Michael Murphy race in Lake Ronkonkoma, and may or may not have drank a few pints of Guinness the night before. And as we're running, literally the first quarter mile, I plant on my right foot, it buckles. I step on it again as it's folded over. I feel this crunch and pop. And for about 4 months, this thing was like 3 times the size. I would just strap on these Michael Jordan Air Jordans, these obnoxious white and orange basketball shoes. And I would still do the PSTs, which was like a 1.5 mile run, max rep pull-ups, max rep push-ups, and a 500-meter swim. Still getting qualifying standards, but my SEAL officer who was like prepping me for the program, he's like, hey, G, like, you're literally like going to cripple yourself long term. Like, you can't even walk, and yet you're still running. Like, you might want to pull yourself out of this. And I was like, shit. Like, it was crushing. It was like identity death when I could no longer do the federal special agent process. Another identity death when I could no longer do the SEAL process. And it was like my 2 things I wanted ever since I was a little kid were stripped from me for variables outside my control. And was definitely overtraining. It was like pushing my body to its extreme limits and injuring myself and then not giving myself proper time to recover. So totally on me. My body broke down. But at that point, I was like, all right, then I'm just going to fight. So got the opportunity to get back into MMA. After a 6-year layoff, fought a dude who had about 12 fights. At that point, I only had 1 MMA fight. And yeah, wound up grinding out a very tough victory on a guy, Ron Marshall, later fought for Bellator and a few other big organizations. Then I went to Minsk, Belarus. I got the opportunity to, this is kind of funny, my boy, or my coach, gives me, hey, Gareth, meet in ITC, Astoria, Queens. You meet me there Tuesday. We've got the Kumite. I'm like, a Kumite? What do you mean? We've got some men. They want to test to see if you're tough, and we give you opportunity to go to Belarus. You represent the United States. I was like, really? All I have to do is show up in Astoria, Queens at ITC, and I get to go to Russia. He's like, if you pass the test, we talk. So I go there, and it's like something out of like Bloodsport. There's like 6 dudes waiting for me in a basement in Astoria, Queens. And fucking dudes like savage pro Thai fighters, like judo, sambo guys, wrestlers, and just go through this gauntlet of like dudes who are trying to knock me out. And I get rocked. I get fucking head kicked by this one dude, like a sick Muay Thai pro fighter. And I get hit with a spinning back fist. I'm like definitely rocked, like probably concussed. Then I have like 4 more fights. And it was awesome. At that point, he was like, bro, like, you're dumb, you're tough, you get to go to Belarus, you come with us. What is your size? We get you uniform, we get you gi, and we go fight. And I'm like, all right. And long story short, went to the, former USSR, Minsk, Belarus, and got an opportunity to fight 4 times in one day. And
Nice.
I had a beautiful ability to represent the United States with a U.S. American flag on my back and fight over Memorial Day weekend. And
that's cool.
The first fight that I had, this guy was from Moldova, so former USSR country. And, it was the first year that they implemented the Muay Thai kick, the low kick. So most of these dudes would just try to like toe the line and just get you to throw down and just try to knock you out, kind of fight in a phone booth, so to speak. And so I saw how everyone was fighting, and I was like, all right, I'm going to keep distance. I'm going to create angles of attack, and I'm just going to try to butcher the lead leg. And that's what I did, just kind of circled away from this guy's powerful right cross that I saw him drop quite a few guys with, and just would set up usually a cross left hook low kick combo to that lead left leg.
Just chopping his leg away.
Chopped that leg like it was the base of the tree, and my shin was an axe. I would basically, see his left hand drop, and then I'd come upstairs with like a 2-3-2,
Nice.
2-piece and a biscuit. And after a few of those, he decided to shoot in on me. I was like, oh, great, you want to wrestle? Got him in a guillotine.
Done.
And his head was on the right side, the ref was on the left. So I'm literally strangling him. As he's tapping, the ref doesn't see his hand moving and tapping my hip. So he goes out of my arms. And that was the first guy I fought. So choke him unconscious. Second guy I fight, I'm pretty sure I tore my meniscus in that fight. And I tell my coach, I'm like, hey, coach, my knee doesn't feel too well. Like, it's kind of buckling on me. He's like, so what do you want me to do? You want me to rub it? You little bitch, you're going to not fight? I'm like, no, I'm not saying I'm not going to fight. You're my coach. I think you should know that the state of my knee is freaking damaged. I'm not trying to cop out. Let's go. And then the next fight, I fight this like juggernaut from Iran, like monstrous dude, probably 300 pounds. And a sick kickboxer. Like, he's like snap kicking dudes in the head. 300
pounds is a big man.
Yeah, I was like 220. Most of these dudes were like 285 to 300.
Jesus.
And we had some like heavy exchanges, like just staying in the pocket and thudding. I hit him with a snap kick to the head, and then I see him kind of get rocked. And he engages. He like swings on me. I think I slip the left hook, body lock him, go for like a Sadogari outside trip, get on top, and then just go freaking scarf hold, Keisakatami, drop my hips into his stomach. Because I was like, I got to kill this dude, or else he's going to knock me out. Like, I was pretty confident he was going to steal my consciousness. So I was like, I got to steal his soul with a submission. And I crank his neck as I drop my hip on his stomach and just get him to submit with that. And great feeling. And like, I still keep in touch with him. He's still one of my boys.
That's hilarious.
Fight 2 more times and then make it to the semis against the former Belarusian champ. And dude, I unload on this guy, like hit him with a 3-piece, kick him in the liver. He gives me this like smiling smirk back as if like nothing that I did to him even phased or affected him.
That's scary. That's a moment where you're like, damn. It's like,
it felt like 2-year-old girl. And I was like, wow, like I hit him with everything I got, and he's still in the pocket smiling at me. So we had a pretty significant battle. At that point, I'd see him knock out 3 guys before me. So I came to terms with the fact that I was probably going to lose my consciousness. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go home with my shield or come home on it. And not going to disappoint my American fanfare back home on Memorial Day weekend. So I went out there, went up losing the points. He wound up winning the tournament again for the 2nd year in a row. But it was just an awesome honor, and have the American flag on my back to get a podium spot.
Nice.
And
what are we pointing at, brother?
That fight.
Oh, the fight that's on this. That's it?
Fight.
no, so that was against Ryan Hardy Evans, Bellator fighter, and that was a lightweight title fight for Flex Fights in 2013.
This is like borderline dating profile.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what I'm saying? Look at the pretty boy with the suit, but I'll crack anybody that comes next to my woman. And I'm a good man.
And I'm a
gentleman with my boys.
I'm a savage gentleman.
So going back to this though, like so you were doing the political thing with the Mexican whatever border, and then after that, then led to what?
Yeah, so at that point, I was married to a beautiful human being who I started to get into real estate with. So I did title insurance, and I was still competing in mixed martial arts, still doing jiu-jitsu, but got injured. Suffered a really devastating right hook to the back of my left head, and for 2.5 years, had some serious battles with vertigo. So again, for the 3rd time, suffered an identity death. Right as I'm getting like acclaim in martial arts, right as I'm getting some good opportunities to start a professional career, get clipped in the back of the head, and completely debilitating. Like every time I would lock up with people in jiu-jitsu, I'd see double, triple vision. Still competed with that, but it was like, do I want to take any more blunt force trauma to the brain? And the answer was no. At that point, pivoted, got into real estate, and started a career within title insurance. All the while still doing protection, but protecting people not only in a physical sense, but also protecting their real estate portfolios as well.
Okay. So then you went. Are you still doing the title stuff?
Still, yeah.
Still
Actively doing title. So the VP of Business Development for Kensington Vanguard, which is a national title insurance company. With the top 10 underwriters, and we write both residential and commercial title insurance policies nationwide. And so my umbrella of services in GTH Consulting is to protect not only individuals through personal protection of them, their families, and their colleagues, but also protect their real estate portfolios through title insurance.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So when did GTH actually come into fruition? When did was like this thing you decided, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, like 100% for me?
GTH Consulting was founded in 2018.
Okay.
November of 2018.
And then how did you start first? What was the process? Give me a little feedback, because I always find that kind of stuff interesting, because it's obviously GTH is a result of like what's happened in your life. Mm-hmm. It's you started as a protector since you were like a kid. You've done martial arts, the great story with your grandfather with the firearm and all that. And obviously you've always wanted to protect people, including kids, especially kids that can't protect themselves, which is amazing. And then, you've had a couple of fallbacks because you wanted to do the MMA because you wanted to crack people in the face, for a living, and it just didn't happen the way you expected it to happen, which is, I tell people that, I've had discussions with my boy over here, Sebastian, because he's 6'6", and I told him, hey man, there's the route to become an MMA fighter is rough. It's a hard battle.
It's brutal.
It's brutal.
It's unforgiving.
And you might make it, but the money is really low. If you do make it, you have to then also be flamboyant about it as well. So you have to also sell yourself. It's not just about your skills.
Yeah.
So even if you're like a solid, fighter, you run the risk of getting injured. Mm-hmm. And then if you do make it, then you also run the risk of not making enough money because you don't know how to sell yourself.
Exactly.
So it's like a weird like dichotomy that you got to be like going through here.
Super tough road. You want to be humble as a martial artist, but you also have to have some fanfare and build your brand.
Yeah, you got to be.
Yourself.
Yeah,
you got to have that ego. You got to stroke that ego.
Of course. Yeah, to be honest with you, an MMA fighter, you guys are a little bit different, bro. You guys are a different breed.
It's a different breed, for sure. Definitely a few screws loose. To anyone who's willing to step inside a cage in their underwear and scrap with another man, but it is beautiful. And honestly, the injuries and everything that's come from it, I wouldn't regret any of it. I'm happy that I've had the pitfalls and the
look at you, man. You're 6'3", good looking dude. You're 235. You're doing okay for yourself. So it's obviously it's worked out in your favor, and it's made you the man that you are today. Even though you've always had that protectiveness, but without all that hardship, I don't think you would be as humble as you are.
Exactly.
You have you ooze friendliness, but at the same time, you command respect by the way you look. Mm-hmm. And it's obviously the turmoil that you've had throughout your life has led to where you're at now, that you now solidified what you've wanted since you were like a kid, and that's kind of where you're at now. So if you started in 18, you're obviously been doing the title thing. You were doing the protective services for other people, and then you decided to start kind of trying to pick up business on your own.
Exactly. And
so give some stories, man. Like give me a story or two. You don't have to say names, but like give me some situations that you've been in. This like, well, holy shit, this was like real. This was a funny one, or this is because it's like sometimes especially if you're dealing with like famous people or stuff like that, you gotta be running into some fucking crazy shit.
Oh, some wild.
Then you're like, what? How did this happen? I don't know.
Experiences, yeah, a lot of danger, like random things, like so. 2 summers ago, working a big high-end event, 4th of July party in the Hamptons. Notable individual, singer, songwriter, just like on top of her game. A beautiful queen of a woman, and hanging out with her man who's smoking a Cohiba Maduro wrapped cigar and chopping it up with him, making sure he's good to go. They've got everything they need. And right as he's taking a puff from his cigar, I look to his beautiful queen, and I see smoke billowing from her hair, and I'm like, what the heck? And I look closer, and her hair is literally in a candle that's like strategically placed right underneath this little backdrop.
And she's not aware.
Hair is about to erupt in a fireball of flames. I literally have to push this dude out of the way. If you knew who it was, you'd make the story that much better. Pat out her hair before it erupts into this fireball of flames, like Moses seeing the bush of fire right in the Sinai desert. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, thanks, G. Like, without you, your head would have went on fire. That was insane. That same night, like seeing an all-out brawl break out between 2 individuals heavy in the rap game. One storms the stage, attacks the other. I get in between the 2 of them, like well-known rappers, dude. They're swinging on each other. I'm in between. Fight spills out into the kitchen of this residence we're doing the party at, and all of a sudden I see this dude about to reach for a Michael Myers like butcher knife. I'm like, yo, to my boy, knife, grab the knife. He pushes one dude out of the way, grabs this monstrous 13-inch blade out of the sight of this individual who's scrapping. Fight pillows out into the streets. At this point, it's a 20-on-20. One individual in that party reaches into his waistband, pulls a gun. At that point, my boy Jay rushes up to him, retains the pistol, gets it out of his hand before anyone's
before some people start getting shot at.
Or
Yeah.
anyone's about to get popped off. And then we ushered the two feuding parties away from each other, get them into their, respective modes of transportation and get them the hell out of Dodge. But like crazy things that you wouldn't expect. That same night, watching this drunk girl almost go face first into like 150 daisy-chained 18-inch mortars as we're about to light off this firework extravaganza of epic proportions, and she's drunker than freaking Sonny Bono and literally about to go head first into this face full of fireworks. Grab her as she's like a step away from getting blown up into a tiny little Brazilian booty parts, and this was all in the same night. So what we do,
This is one night.
all in the same night. What we do is mitigate risk and prevent massive casualties and like death and destruction from taking place. So,
You're
like,
the person you're protecting, her hair was literally lit on fire.
yes,
Right after that,
all out massive brawl,
a 20-on-20 brawl with a possible knife and firearm.
100%. So,
And then after that, you save some drunk ass girl's life.
getting
Blown
blown to
to bits.
smithereens from like probably 150 daisy chained 18-inch mortars, like high level professional grade
Fireworks.
pyrotechnics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Had people sneaking in through the bushes, people offering $150,000 cash to get into some of these parties and events that we run. Like,
Jesus.
it is insane the lengths that people will go to get to the inner circles of the people that we protect. To like 2 summers ago, last summer, running up the mountains in Greece to literally try to figure out where we can put a helicopter down so that we can get my client from Mykonos, Greece to a DJ set in Ibiza, Spain, like on the jump. Like, so the most unexpected, crazy, adventurous things you could ever think of. And like, I can never tell my mom. My mom doesn't even know where I'm at. So like, no one in my family knows where I'm at when I'm on these Oculus global, EP missions.
Yeah.
Because for operational security, I can never
Tell anybody.
yeah, I can never talk about the client,
Right.
and I never would, and I can never talk about the location that we're at.
Right.
And it's something that I take a solemn oath to protect and defend. But as someone who is single, like, I've been out in like Dubai at like the Billionaire Club, like on a date, like hanging out with a beautiful girl and like someone who I think we have like good chemistry with, and I'll get a phone call and I'll be like, gee, grab your go bag, the S500 or the freaking, Maybach's going to be outside in 20 minutes, and we're going straight to
Wherever.
the Prince of Abu Dhabi's Royal Airfield to fly out Oculus on some, 2 to potentially 3 week, movement with our client. And so you literally have to be able to drop everything within a second's notice and expect the unexpected.
Yeah,
with no defined timeline.
As long as you got the girl's number, I'm sure they like it. They're like, oh, he's super VIP. I can't hold on to him because he's going off in the dark off on the private airport to go do his job.
Exactly. So like wild, like flying out from the Royal Air Force Base in England, like passing through like multiple thresholds of security to get on a private jet to fly somewhere locally or globally, because we don't want to deal with the traffic, and it's cool. It's an awesome, like, I take so much pride in protecting the people that I protect, and I as someone who carries that legacy of the samurai and of service to others, it's a tailor-made industry that I was born and bred for. But it's nice now. I'm in Miami. I'm actively, creating a home base here, and can't really talk about the mission set that I'm doing and what we're doing, but it's enabled me some more normalcy. I'm looking forward to getting back to teaching Jiu-Jitsu, teaching Muay Thai, teaching, armed and unarmed defense systems, and really just bringing value to Miami and the community.
That'd be cool if you start doing the. I know that I was thinking of doing the Tim Kennedy thing. I forget what it's called.
Sheepdog response.
Yeah,
Tim's
that
a
sheepdog
friend,
response.
and, Tim's an awesome guy, and so we will train. We could train.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Around your schedule.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. Because it's one of those things. It's I've never really done it, so it's kind of like I know how to fight, but it's never done like the whole firearm kind of thing. That's kind of cool, too. You know what I'm saying? That's cool.
Got you covered. And it's a fusion. It's a fusion of like the jiu-jitsu and the striking with the wrestling and grappling interfused with knife defense, gun defense.
Right.
Kind of the synergy of all those systems, you know? So you have the whole man approach to defending yourself and your family.
Nice, nice. All right, man. I think we talked quite a bit. We went a little politics. We did a little bit of everything. So it's good to see you, man. And
Always a pleasure.
so obviously these people will find you at GTH Consulting. You have your Instagram, I assuming is the same thing, GTH Consulting.
GTH Consulting _RS. And anything you need from the realm of defensive tactics, executive protection, private security, and then also title insurance, you know? So we protect not only real estate portfolios, but also people, their families, and their loved ones.
You also do, before we head out, you also do some charity work as well, right? I see that you on your Instagram profile, you do charity work around the world as well.
So work for an organization or volunteer for an organization called Aerial Recovery Group,
Okay.
which is a disaster and crisis relief organization.
Okay.
Founded by Jeremy Locke and Brittany Turner, where they go globally to places like Turkey and rescue people from the rubble of the earthquake. Active in Ukraine, where they're helping basically rescue orphans that are caught in the crosshairs of the Ukrainian-Russo conflict, and basically travel globally to end and ease human suffering in disaster and war zones throughout the globe.
Jesus, man. I kind of want to be like you when I grow up, man. Jesus Christ, bro. Like you're doing things.
I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I'm never doing enough.
That's people that give a lot, which is amazing. The more you give, the more you realize you don't feel like you're giving enough, man. All right, man. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Until next time.